Well, here we are podcasting on the road again, Renee. Can you believe that we chose to do this again?
I cannot believe I've done this now twice. Oh, I
Yeah,
cannot.
two different states.
Yes, two different setups,
Yep.
two different backdrops, and all the fun that it entails.
It is all the fun it entails. We got more hits the last time we did a remote, and we were sitting in front of a fireplace. There were lots of deer heads hanging around. It was a very different vibe than the hotel we find ourselves in at this conference center.
Very much so. Yes. Yes. And that one was very distracting because we had the people coming through the lobby the entire time. But today we just have the van behind us. We have less people, but it could rain. That could
Right.
add some interest.
So where are we?
We're in Champaign, Illinois, University of Illinois campus.
Right.
You can probably see the dome a little bit in the back if it wasn't so cloudy. So Jason, what's going on the farm while you're in Champaign?
Well, we're right up against harvest time, and those grain bins are coming along great. Electrical's getting run, and so it's just stressful. And I've been traveling and running around, so just making sure all the parts and pieces are coming together, so we are ready to go for fall. I am a preparer. Like, I like to schedule things out, and I'll just give you an example of farmers have to be flexible. The propane guy called me and said, "I'll be there in an hour." Well, I was not anywhere close to where I could go just meet him in an hour. And I had called and left 3 messages. Let me know ahead of time, because they had to put the new gas lines in and they go around our septic system, and we had new electrical just put under the ground. So that kind of summarizes that farming's kind of just always flexible. Hey, I'll meet you over there in an hour. That doesn't always work when you're trying to juggle all the things we're trying to juggle. And I'm sure a lot of people can connect with that.
Yeah. The other night I was actually babysitting friend's little guy, and he's about 6 months old. And the bug guy decided he needed to come over during that time. And Brent wasn't home during that. And so, yes, I was like trying to pick up a baby, get to a door, all of the things.
Yeah.
And you're like, I didn't know that when he was coming. I mean, I guess it was during the window he said he'd be there, but I was really hoping Brent would be there to take care of it.
Right.
He wasn't there. So today, what are we talking about? We're going to be talking about Recovery Month. So the month of September is Recovery Month. And so today we're going to be sharing all about Recovery Month, talking about the themes that SAMHSA is talking about. We're going to see a lot of show notes today about recovery, talking about some data in that space, and some stories of some of the work we've done related to recovery. So we're going to be chatting about recovery. So to kick us off, Jason, why Recovery Month, and why is that important?
Well, absolutely. And this is kind of more of an upbeat show. Sometimes we talk about the problems the system has, but I think, we want to take this opportunity, since it is September, and just talk about, and celebrate and step back for a minute, all the individuals who are in recovery from mental health and addiction disorders, because sometimes we forget, right, that we talk about the system issues. We're always advocating for system change of how can we be better? How can we do better? How can our systems and our laws be better? But there's so many individuals that are personally impacted all the time. And I think September and what National Recovery Month has grown to be, over the last, I think, 25 years of really acknowledging and decreasing the stigma around substance abuse and mental health conditions.
Right. I'm really excited about this conversation because we're going to be talking about peers and peers in recovery and some of the great things that we've seen with them. We're always big advocates of them and their work and trying to get them more work and being more utilized in our system. But it really does start with them, and their recovery is what that's all about. And so to really celebrate recovery. So I know that there are some key elements to the recovery platform, and we're going to, in our show notes, we'll have attachments. So if you want to use what SAMHSA has out for the month to look at, to promote it yourselves on your social media, they always have some great things that already created for you that could be used. So I know we have that in our show notes, but what are some of the themes for Recovery Month?
Well, absolutely. And I love going out, and I love seeing all the proclamations that happen during the month of September. And I hope that you go out and support your local, whether it's just your local city council, your local counties, your state. I think it's important that you do have those proclamations, and you take that time to recognize and go support those groups who are putting those proclamations forward to acknowledge this, right? Because there's some key principles, right? And, the first one is recovery. The recovery journey isn't just for the person with a substance use or mental health issue. It includes everyone that cares about them. And that's why those proclamations are so important. It's about the community coming together and acknowledging that these issues are real and people need support.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the fact that this is a holistic approach. And when we talk about those proclamations, what it does, besides just reminding people how important it is, it reminds us as leaders that maybe the legislators, the city council, that it's our job to be part of that holistic approach. And so it really does put it at top of mind and remind it's a community issue. And so
Absolutely.
proclamations aren't just about the people in recovery. It's about all of us kind of giving statement to, or more of saying, hey, we're going to support you. We're in it with you. And just sort of remember and put to the top of the list that this is an important topic for everybody. And so it's really important because you got to get the public involved, because recovery doesn't happen without supportive people.
Right.
We'll talk about more about that in a minute,
Right.
about doing that. And I know we also talk about, being able to stay in connection with other people that care, and how important that is. And we've heard when we talk about stories in a little bit of people, the people that are most successful, right, end up with supportive community. Those without supportive community, or maybe people who are still battling addiction, typically don't do
Right.
as well on the recovery journey. It's a big key.
And it makes me think about families. This is a great time to recognize what families go through, with their family members and loved ones as they move through that journey of recovery, right? It's ups and downs. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. That's what recovery is. And so to acknowledge everything that families put forth in caring for their loved one is really an important part of Recovery Month.
Right. And when I was talking, we were interviewing someone this last week for release and reentry into the community. And what they made a statement that I know is true, but they're talking about their found family. And it's not always maybe the family. Sometimes the family is what helped get them into trouble, or helped kind of create the addiction. And so in that person's life, they were talking about a new found family that they've created, of very supportive people that are going to wrap around them as they reenter the community, and how blessed they are and thankful for a found family. So it's not always just about your biological family.
Right.
Sometimes those folks may not have turned out the way you'd hoped, or maybe they have their own addictions and issues. So family is a broader term. And so sometimes it's talking about your church groups. It could be your communities. It could be the people that you have become friends with. So when we talk family, it's really in a broad sense.
Well, and that really goes to the second pillar when we look at Recovery Month, is that when recovery care and support reflect someone's unique cultural values, they're more likely to succeed, right? So whoever you define as family, no one's alone, right? It should be based on what someone's individual goals are. Right. And we should wrap the supports and tools that work for them. Right. There's no single path forward. And so it's not about a treatment center down the road. It's about, a combination of things of how you can support someone. And everyone's unique. Everyone finds recovery in their own way. There's not one path to get there. And we need to recognize that and celebrate that, especially, we haven't talked much about workplaces, but Recovery Month in workplaces is really important because it's partly to celebrate those employees as well.
And thinking about the cultural aspects, when we have people from different cultures and different backgrounds, what recovery looks like may look different, and the supports that they get look different. And so I know in our prison system, and we have some of the Native American traditions available to people so they can continue their religions. We have other religions where they can do their prayers during the days. And so making sure that it's culturally appropriate for folks, even in incarceration, even in treatment, so that they can have that cultural support. There's maybe the spirituality that they believe in that helps them on their journey. And so it really is important to make space for that, even if it's not what you believe, but giving them that opportunity. And we see that in some places. Sometimes we should do that more, but it is something that we often really take seriously.
Absolutely.
Sure they have their culture and their spirituality.
Which, it really, that comes to the third one about wellness and recovery, encompasses the person's whole life, not just their substance use and mental health issue, right? So it's much more than just about someone in recovery. It's about wellness, the access someone has to the gym or to other types of classes or activities that help them. And so really looking, again, across the community about how do we support people? Do they have access to that caring community at church or synagogue or wherever they choose to go? All of those things are key elements. And that goes far beyond just recovery and going to a meeting once a week, right?
And we find people, especially in the group that I work with, that will have dealt with their anxiety and depressions by going a more holistic route. And maybe the medications didn't work, or had side effects that they could not deal with or handle. And so then they find other means, and they could be, like you're saying, working out, or eating better foods, or, how they use their mind and meditation and different things. And so, making that an option. So it's not always just medication only,
right?
Because it doesn't always work for people.
Right.
So we had a guy not too long ago that was talking about if he can work out till his body feels physically exhausted, he feels better. And he used to have night terrors and stuff, but by doing the more physically exhausted, so he's looking for jobs in a space that it's more labor intensive, because he sleeps more soundly at night with that. So just thinking kind of the whole picture. So a lot of our folks do a wrap program, that wrap around programming, so that they think about their whole life. And in that, they can decide what other kinds of features does their life need in order to, be able to be
Yep.
holistic. And so it does really tie into that.
It's fantastic. And then finally, by sharing stories and lived experience, peers engage in recovery with a vital sense of belonging, support, and hope. So it's a great opportunity for those with lived experience to tell us about their journey, to tell us about their story, and for us to listen, right? And I think so oftentimes do we really stop and listen and hear of the challenges of others so we can better understand what the barriers are and what the opportunities are for those individuals who have struggled with some of these conditions over the years.
And I know when we get to our report in a little bit, talking about stories, there, people can hear things so differently from somebody with that lived experience.
Absolutely.
If they've gone through the struggle of not finding the right medications or having some of the side effects or, just the challenges maybe with family or all the different things, they hear that differently than they can from a clinician.
Mhm.
And it's not, clinicians shouldn't get upset about that. They're saying the same thing, but in different words.
Mhm.
And so that's just more supportive because they've been around the block. They understand. And it's just a really helpful group for. And I know in recovery, I mean, it's not a straight line for getting more recovered, but one of the highest levels of advocacy of,
Right.
of your own issues
Right.
and helping others is where your wellness journey
Right.
continues. And then you might slide back. So it's not always just a straight line, but people that can get to that level, we talk about that in provider, getting to
Right.
that level of that tier of being able to advocate for themselves and others just shows improved health and growth. And so when you're able to
Absolutely.
do that is, and so giving them that opportunity to share those stories is vital in an individual's recovery and showing how they can use that for good for others gives them that sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And it starts to break down the stigma that still exists, especially in rural areas. Here we are in a rural area again, and we know and we hear over and over again that stigma is a huge barrier, and that really kind of sends us into data, right? We always like to sit down and remind everyone there's new data coming out every day. And I just pulled the State of Mental Health in America 2024. That report just came out from Mental Health America. I'm sure you read it already, didn't you, Renee? No?
Ask me this question, and I can't keep up with these reports.
I know. And so we're going to link that report in the show notes because just in case you missed it.
If you're like me,
Right. I want to give you the opportunity to go back and take a look at that. But, I think part of that report reminds us of just how prevalent mental health conditions are, how prevalent the diagnosis of mental health conditions are, and just some of the key takeaways right off the top was 23% of adults experienced a mental illness in the past year. That's almost 60 million Americans, right? So we all know someone who's struggling with a mental health condition. And I think even more so than that, 20%, almost, it was 18, almost 20% of adults in the United States had a substance use disorder in the past year. And 77% of the people with a substance use disorder never got treatment.
Wow.
Never received any treatment at all. And I think that's just horrible. If we compare that to health conditions, if we said, 77% of people who had a heart attack never went and got treated for that heart attack, that would be huge. And there are a lot of people would not make it today. And so I think it's really important we look at those statistics, ask ourselves why.
Right.
Why is that happening?
Right. And in my line of work of thinking about folks that are incarcerated, whether it's jail or prison, they're estimating, and this is a SAMHSA number, that 63% of people in jail and 58% have a substance use disorder. And so it's a lot of folks coming in that are struggling. And so it's really important as we talk about that, when we're looking at re-entering people into the community and the types of supports that we move people toward is huge. Because again, it matters if they get the treatment that they need, and it matters if they have the support of people around them that can help. And
Absolutely.
a big, big number. And to my own anecdotal, just thinking about it, I think the numbers are actually higher than that, but I only kind of see some of the higher level folks. So maybe not, but I'm a little jaded. I would think the numbers actually be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you think about those numbers, think about what can you do in your own community, right? And so as I think about, some of the ways that we see advocacy playing out, one of the ones I think about the most, Renee, is we both have worked with NAMI to some extent. We both do NAMI provider, and maybe we should just do a brief talk about what is NAMI provider, Renee. It's getting really dark out here right now. And if it starts pouring down rain, this
Brent said 2 hours, but I don't know.
I'm not sure, but we did get umbrellas in the bags we got for this conference. Well, that's okay. That's all part of the it's all part of the experience. What is NAMI provider? And we'll see if we can get this in before
all right.
It pours.
Provider, the idea is that you have a team of 3 that is a person that's a mental health professional, a family member, and a person with lived experience. And all of those members also either have lived experience themselves or a family member with lived experience. The idea being that we go out to providers of any type of healthcare and help them understand the lived experience of a family and a person that is dealing with mental health and substance use issues. So the idea is that you help them through storytelling, teach them what they need to know as far as, how you'd better help somebody if they came into your podiatry appointment. And so you're talking about people that might be chiropractors or, physical therapists or groups of people who may not always be on that front line, but people know that if your mental health and your substance use aren't cared for, your recovery in other medical areas isn't as good. And so this is helping give those people that live and work in different types of healthcare arenas the opportunity to know what would be better practices. How would you ask good questions? How would you help? So it's a provider, and it's a really effective program. And the state of Iowa, Des Moines University is one of the first countries in the nation that makes every single DO student, their doctor of osteopathy, coming out to be a primary care physician in many cases. Third year students, every single one of them have to take this course. And so they're going to come out prepared to have mental health and substance use conversation.
And I think it's phenomenal what we've seen. I've been able to do some of those DMU trainings and being able to see how they're now removing the cushions from around us, Renee, but they're so kind about supporting us here. I know she's committed that it's going to rain. But
it is, you can see.
Well, I know, but we're going to be, it's going to be a great, but I think as I've experienced that, I've learned so much from those individuals with lived experience. Having them come share their stories and their experience, not just within the medical system, depending on where we're doing those trainings, but within the systems of those staff that are there. And I think that's part of the power of that. And I can tell you as a professional and advocate, I've learned so much sitting next to those folks who literally have a lifetime of stories to share. And a lot of those are really painful stories for them to share. And they're coming back and doing that because they want to make it better for someone else. And I think that's really what makes that experience so well. And I think that's really the power of Recovery Month. As we think about what does Recovery Month embody and how can we support it, it really gives us the opportunity to go and listen and hear more.
So I'm going to make a call right now. We're going to hit pause because the wind's kicking up and we're going to end up in the middle.
I think we could just wrap this one and just run for the woods. No?
We'll continue in a minute in a new location. I'll be back soon.
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it, Renee?
Can you see all of that going on back there? The wind kicked up, the thunder started rolling, and we had to move a location.
It was a nice morning coffee out on the patio, but luckily the hotel staff came out, and as they were getting the cushions, they collected us and took us to our own room. So this is even a better location, I guess, than we were. It was the lightning and thunder that probably forced us inside more than anything.
The big cloud that came over and the big wind gust was the part of me where I thought, I've been in a few too many tornadoes in the Midwest, and I'm against it.
So when we kind of outlined this and said podcasting on the road, this will be fun. Well, we have some things to learn. Renee, I think we were just going to start talking about data. Weren't we, as we follow our normal outline of how we have this conversation?
We had a little bit of conversation about data, yes, and then we were going to start talking about our stories. So one of the other pieces that I wanted to talk about was the American Psychological Association. Their estimate of how many people in jail that have substance use disorders is higher. It's about 65%, and about 45% of, they say, of federal prisoners that have mental health issues. And that really is more of my experience. There's a lot of people struggling, and it's a chicken and the egg situation. A lot of times the folks I have in an incarcerated setting may come in with what looks like a psychosis, and it's hard to know if that is substance related that's causing that psychosis or if it really is a mental health issue causing the psychosis. So it takes a while to get them into a more sober state and then to help them really figure out. So there's a lot of tentatives in those diagnoses because it's really tough to weed out. And then the other piece of that is, were they self-medicating along with the substances? And so what's sort of the root? So there's this really big chicken and the egg. Is it a mental health issue that drove the substance use, or is it substance use that drove mental health? And it's kind of a tough road to try to figure out. And I'm guessing that's all the case all the time. But the good part about incarceration, even though people are upset that people have to get good treatment there. They're in one spot for a minute.
Right.
And so
Right.
you have that time to look at somebody over time
Hmm.
and sort of really get a better diagnosis, a better understanding. And I'm just going to say it is pouring
I know.
outside. So
I know. It's a good thing we're here. It's a good thing we made it inside.
The equipment would have appreciated it.
Well, I don't think so. And, to your point, Renee, about that, that's part of why Recovery Month is so important. So we can recognize these same things in the community.
Right.
And we need to learn how to have more patience in the community, in the communities we live in, of how to support folks, because that's been the challenge, right? Is that when we get someone someplace, unfortunately, that's why jails and prisons have become the default treatment facilities. And so we're both part of something that's really exciting. We do work with NAMI, and NAMI Provider is really a great program where we train lots of folks in lots of different settings. Des Moines University, for one, we've both done training there. And it's really where individuals with lived experience can come and share their personal experience with
Right.
professionals who are going to treat them in the future. And I think that that's so powerful. I've learned so much going and training with folks who have lived with severe mental illness for their entire lives and found strategies and ways to find recovery and share kind of the raw parts of their stories, the steps forward and the steps back that they've taken over their life and the challenges they still face today. And I think that's just such a powerful way of understanding or trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes to better understand what they're experiencing.
Yeah, and we have folks that are in our provider team. There's a couple that come to mind that have felony backgrounds.
Yeah.
One's even was in a federal prison, and
Yeah.
another like in our state prison. And to have them be able to tell their story of recovery, even though it's not a straight line by any stretch, but they've really made some gains. The people can really hear that. One of the programs that we use in our incarcerated system in Iowa is a program called Tech to Connect, and it is a group of iPads. And there's a gentleman by the name of Ralph Sarin who recently passed away. And Sarin guides were guides that he created for people. But there's a story of a person that have gone through the prison system and with lived experience. And that entire training program comes from that person's point of view. And people talk about it all the time, just being so impactful to them, that what a life they've made for themselves after incarceration, that, that's same story. And that often there's mental health involved in that, there's substance use involved in that. And so we've talked about that through the entire episode, about just the importance of people being able to tell their story.
Yeah.
And so it's in every area. So it could be that you were in foster care, or that you were adopted, or that you spent time in a facility. It's not just about incarceration, but any time like that, when you're thinking about re-entering into the community, it's really important to hear those stories, because it really impacts people's lives.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, right? And so I think as you think about National Recovery Month and what you're doing to support it here this September, think about all the options and opportunities that you have to get out and support individuals across your own community, support those organizations that support those individuals, be part of those proclamation signings that happen at your county, city, and state level. There's so much you can do. It's a great opportunity to be an advocate.
Yep. And so today we have a recovering self-care policy tip of the week and a soapbox.
Oh, I don't know this one yet. I'm excited.
So ladies, there's annual things that we all need to do to take care of ourselves. One of which is a mammogram.
I just heard this story at home, but go on.
You heard this story?
Not this story, but I've heard stories. Yes.
This story goes like this. So ladies, you are out there, for those that are men that are listening, think about a lunch tray in school, except it's clear and there's two of them and it squishes everything together. I went to mine last week. Guess what happens? Lady locks me in. She goes around back to look at the image. She trips over my gown, falls smack into the wall.
Wow.
Not kidding. So I'm stuck. She's over there. So I wondered to myself, exactly, if she knocked herself out, how do you get out?
That's a good question. Is there not emergency release? Is there like a big red button?
Not that any of us know.
Okay.
So just so you know, I posted this on social. I got 1,800 responses.
Really?
Because all of us now want to know if there's an emergency release button. And here's the soapbox, ladies. If men had to put any of their parts in anything that would require that to be stuck, there'd be emergency release.
There would be a
buttons.
big red, it would be a flashing red button.
A button.
There would be. It's fact. Yep.
Literally, I was like, seriously, had she knocked herself out, how would I have gotten out? And all the ladies, the hysterical people that were included in that conversation about all the things they thought about. People are worried about doing these in the first place. And now, you might get stuck. And I don't think there's an emergency button, people. But the self-care part is, there are things we have to do as we're older,
True.
and that you have to still do it. Even if you're afraid of it, honestly, the odds of you getting stuck in a machine is pretty slim.
Right.
Because I've never had anybody knock themselves out in a doctor's appointment yet. And I've gone to hundreds through my
Yeah.
lifetime. So
Yeah.
this was a first.
Yeah.
I did hear stories about a dental hygienist that whacked herself and was knocked
out.
So apparently it happens. But the trick is you still have to, for self-care, all of us are often caretakers of other people.
Mhm.
And we put on the back burner our own appointments.
Mhm.
So things like colonoscopies, things like mammograms, things just like your general practitioner to get your blood drawn. It's not something I just love to do. I'm not a fan of needles. That's why I'm not a psychiatrist, literally, because I
Mhm.
found out I had to go to medical school and I can't do blood and needles.
Mm.
So I decided I'd go the therapy route instead
Mhm.
because I can't do it. But it's a really important part of life. And we as self-care, we do bad at this.
Yes.
And so just thinking about, yes, crazy things happen. That story's never going to get old because what are the odds of somebody knocking themselves
Mhm.
out during a mammogram? But you still have to go. And it's really, really important to prioritize it. So even like your dental checkups, they're talking now about the connection between like your dental hygiene and cognitive
Absolutely.
decline and the gummy stuff in
Mhm.
your teeth is actually kind of similar to the plaques they're finding in
Mhm.
people's brains. So it's not something to mess around
Right.
with. And I know that I'm not always good at making time and
Mhm.
taking time to get that stuff done. So it is a serious note, but it's also hilarious if you think about somebody knocking themselves out, tripping over your gown
True.
in an office.
The takeaway is if they ask you if someone else needs to be in the room with you, you always say yes. That's
Somebody that can hear you.
absolutely, absolutely.
There should have been help.
There should have been.
I know one of my favorite comments was maybe there could have been like all the firemen come in to rescue.
That
you.
would have been funny.
Oh goodness.
Would have been funny. Only these things happen to you, Renee, though. Only to you. So
7:30 in the morning. My brain was not prepared for what
goodness.
happened that day. So today, everybody, we talked about a whole lot of things in two different venues. We started out outdoors. You can see now behind us, it is pouring down rain in this town of Champaign. We're on the road. Next time we're going to get together, we're going to talk about this particular conference and all the rural health topics that we talk about in this particular conference because it's a great conference and it's similar to what we've been doing across the Midwest. But today we covered all the things about Recovery Month, and we're very excited for each and every person who has become sober, who has become clean, who is making progress on that road day by day. Very, very proud of you and the work that you've done. And for the community, rally around them and support them because this is a big month. We should do everything we can to support recovery. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you again next time.